The operation is a recovery, not a strike. A U.S. aircraft goes down inside controlled airspace, and security forces establish a night perimeter while recovery assets move. The airfield is dark by order, lights cut to limit exposure, and visibility sits under 100 yards as dust hangs low over scraped dirt. Captain Emily Carter, Air Force Security Forces, holds perimeter command. She answers to higher headquarters by radio, and she is responsible for every person inside the wire. Liability sits with her because she controls the ground picture, the clock, and the record. Rotor wash lifts grit across chem lights marking sectors. Engines idle low beyond the cordon. A blinking emergency strobe flashes against torn aircraft skin. NVG silhouettes pace the line. A watch ticks against a gloved wrist. A notebook opens and takes times. 0204 hours. Fuel margins tighten. Evacuation windows narrow. Signal strength drops and stays degraded. Higher headquarters issues guidance to prepare disengagement. The order is lawful. The risk is immediate. Captain Carter acknowledges receipt and continues to hold. Radio traffic overlaps, then thins. Movement indicators appear beyond the outer markers. This is not about heroics. It is about preventing loss of life, safeguarding sensitive equipment, and avoiding a false after-action narrative written by people not on the ground. Perimeter active. Orders incoming. Authorization pressure increases while perimeter shrinks and radio waits again. The watch face ticks in low light. A red recording light burns on a helmet camera. Dust settles on an open notebook as radio's quiet. Status update. Command traffic pauses. A short tone sounds. Then silence. Documented. On record. This record follows orders and responsibility without embellishment. The chain remains American, accountable, and fully documented. Subscribe to this channel now, and tell us where you are listening from right now. The aircraft goes down during a routine movement under degraded visibility, inside U.S. jurisdiction, with no hostile contact confirmed and no margin for confusion. What follows is not an emergency in isolation. It is a controlled response under conditions that quietly remove options minute by minute. The airfield is blacked out by directive. There are no runway lights, no approach aids, no external markers beyond what security forces place by hand. Wind pushes low smoke across open ground, flattening it until it slides between boots and tires. Visibility holds under 100 yards and does not improve. Engines idle low on the perimeter, kept running to preserve restart windows. Headlamps cut narrow cones that feel smaller with every sweep. Captain Emily Carter, Air Force Security Forces, establishes ground command. She controls the perimeter, the accountability roster, and the log. She answers to higher headquarters by radio, where staff officers track the situation on screens that do not show dust, wind, or distance. She has authority to hold the first ring, request recovery assets, and recommend withdrawal. She does not have authority to invent time. 0211 hours. Fuel clocks start. Security forces push chem lights into the dirt, marking the first ring at measured intervals. Defenders check sectors under headlamp, then switch back to night vision. NVG silhouettes move along scraped ground that offers no cover and no depth. A cracked headset mic carries traffic in fragments. A watch face ticks against a sleeve. A notebook takes entries without commentary. Interrupt. Visibility holds below 100 yards. The mission purpose is straightforward. Secure the site, protect personnel, preserve sensitive equipment until recovery arrives. Recovery assets spool from miles out, staged beyond the blackout line, waiting on clearance that depends on fuel, weather, and risk acceptance. Each delay changes the math. A paper map sits on a crate, grease pencil routes redrawn as conditions shift. Loose straps flap against scorched aircraft skin. An emergency strobe blinks, half buried, marking what cannot move. Rotor wash from a distant aircraft lifts dust in sheets, then drops it again. Interrupt. Recovery assets remain beyond 3 miles. Higher headquarters asks for updates. Captain Carter provides times, distances, and head counts. Guidance comes back measured and cautious. Hold if feasible. Avoid escalation. Prepare options. The language is professional and lawful. It is also distant. Interrupt. Signal integrity degrades and stabilizes low. Fuel time bleeds down across the board. Engines stay warm. Batteries drain. Evacuation windows narrow as weather layers thicken. Wind gusts carry radio hiss across open channels. Traffic thins as priorities sort themselves. Captain Carter logs each transmission. She confirms receipt. She does not editorialize. She understands why abandonment is being considered. A static perimeter at night concentrates risk. A prolonged hold invites unknown movement. Optics matter. Aircraft matter. People matter more. Downed aircraft. Night conditions. Interrupt. Perimeter remains intact. Authorization for recovery launch requires confirmation that the perimeter can hold through approach and load. Authorization for withdrawal requires confirmation that nothing and no one remains exposed. Both decisions rely on the same incomplete picture. Headlamps flick off one by one to preserve night vision. Light cones shrink. The notebook fills another line. The watch ticks past a planned mark. The cracked headset carries a pause longer than the last. Interrupt. Command response latency increases. This is where strain first shows. A request for additional time meets a reminder of risk thresholds set far from the ground. The perimeter still holds. The assets are still out. The clocks keep moving. Movement appears beyond the outer markers without a clear signature. It is not contact. It is not nothing. It is enough to change posture. The blackout holds. Wind keeps smoke low and moving, pushing it across open ground until it smears outlines and softens depth. Visibility stays under 100 yards and fluctuates inside that range. Engines idle low around the perimeter to preserve power and heat. Rotor wash from distant aircraft lifts grit, then settles it again into boots and optics. 0227 hours. Fuel clocks advance. Captain Emily Carter. Air Force Security Forces. Tightens the geometry. Chem lights come in by measured steps, dragged inward to shorten arcs and reduce exposure. The perimeter does not collapse. It compresses. Gloved hands tighten on rifles without changing posture. Headlamps stay off. Night vision stays up. Light cones shrink. Interrupt. Perimeter depth reduces by 20 yards. Higher headquarters issues guidance to prepare withdrawal. The language is deliberate. Risk mitigation, optics, unknown movement. The order is lawful and conditional. It is not an execute. Captain Carter acknowledges receipt and asks for clarification on thresholds. She logs the time and the content. She does not refuse. Radio traffic overlaps as channels compete for space. A handset goes unanswered, then answers late. A cracked headset carries partial sentences. Controlled breathing cuts through static. Interrupt. Command channel. Drops and returns. Degraded. Recovery assets remain outside the blackout line, staged beyond 2 miles. Engines warm and crews waiting. Launch authorization depends on a stable approach corridor and a hold that can last through load and departure. That window narrows as fuel bleeds down across the board. A paper map comes back out. Grease pencil routes adjust by inches that matter at night. The watch ticks past another planned mark. The notebook takes another entry. No commentary, just facts. Interrupt. Recovery assets hold at 2.5 miles. The environment keeps working against precision. Wind gusts flatten smoke again. Dust lifts in sheets under rotor wash and settles into lenses. Alarms remain muted by order. Radios overlap, then thin as priorities sort themselves. Captain Carter reports ground indicators without interpretation, movement beyond markers, no confirmed contact, perimeter holding, fuel margins tightening. She requests clarification on whether guidance anticipates recovery launch or collapse if indicators persist. The response comes back slower than before. Interrupt. Response latency increases. Higher headquarters reiterates preparation for withdrawal. The emphasis shifts to avoiding escalation and limiting exposure. The guidance does not account for the cost of collapsing the ring with assets still inbound. Captain Carter logs the guidance and the gap. Liability remains with the ground commander until relieved. Chem lights move again, dragged closer to the wreckage. Arcs shorten, sectors narrow. Defenders adjust without comment. Loose straps flap against scorched skin. An emergency strobe blinks and then gets shielded to reduce signature. Interrupt. Perimeter stability remains acceptable. Fuel time bleeds down in parallel streams. Ground vehicles idle to preserve batteries. Aircraft crews watch gauges and wait for a call that commits them. Evacuation windows compress as weather layers thicken and wind shifts. 0, 2, 4, 1 hours. Another mark passes. A radio handset rings out with no answer, then stops. A channel returns dirty. Captain Carter requests clarification again. This time, attaching times, distances, and projected casualty risk if collapse occurs before recovery. She frames it as a request, not a refusal. She logs the delay. Interrupt. Clarification request submitted and pending. The threat remains implied. No shots. No charges. Just indicators that refuse to resolve. Movement that does not announce itself. Distance that does not close cleanly. Time that keeps moving. Withdrawal discussed. Threat advancing. Higher headquarters asks whether the perimeter can hold another increment. The question arrives without a commitment. Captain Carter answers with numbers. Yes, for now. With risk. Logged. Interrupt. Risk tolerance threshold approached. The geometry tightens again. Chem lights come in another step. Light cones shrink further. The ring holds, but depth disappears. The notebook fills another line. The watch ticks louder in the absence of radio chatter. Recovery assets report readiness but cannot launch without clearance. Fuel margins now constrain both sides of the equation. Engines idle low. Crews wait. Wind pushes smoke flat again. Interrupt. Fuel margins reach minimum planning values. Captain Carter looks at the map and the clock and the perimeter that still holds. She requests guidance on whether to prioritize recovery launch under compressed margins or execute a controlled collapse now. The question forces a decision that cannot stay abstract. The channel goes quiet longer than before. Interrupt. Command channel. Silent beyond standard interval. This is the last stable second. The perimeter holds. Assets wait. Fuel clocks continue. Under current guidance, the next step will remove options. Captain Emily Carter moves the situation without changing her posture. She does not argue the guidance. She documents the ground truth and submits it through the chain. The blackout holds. Wind carries grit across the perimeter and lays it into seams and lenses. Visibility remains under 100 yards and does not improve. Engines idle low in place. Recovery assets are audible at distance, a steady presence beyond the line. Rotor wash stirs, dust, and then settles it again. Fuel margins are tight but no longer collapsing. 0256 hours. Captain Carter opens the notebook and confirms times already logged. She adds a new entry, precise and complete. Ground indicators, perimeter geometry, fuel status, casualty probability if collapse occurs before recovery. She frames the request carefully. Delay, not refusal. Interrupt. Time-stamped request prepared. The submission goes forward through established channels. It does not bypass authority. It uses it. The request attaches the facts that already exist and the risk that already accrues. It asks higher headquarters to either authorize continuation on record or direct withdrawal on record. Interrupt. Request transmitted with attachments. Radios cycle from overlap to clean confirmations as traffic resolves. A confirmation click replaces static. The helmet camera recording light remains solid and red. The watch face is steady. Grease pencil marks on the paper map. Stop moving. Chem lights hold their positions instead of coming in again. Interrupt. Documentation lock initiated. Higher headquarters acknowledges receipt. The acknowledgement includes a reference number and a time. The response does not resolve the situation yet, but it changes it. The question is no longer abstract. It is now logged. Interrupt. Command acknowledgement received. Perimeter stability improves by inches that matter. Defenders hold sectors without adjustment. Light cones stop shrinking. Engines maintain idle without surge. Fuel time continues to bleed down, but the rate stabilizes as decisions align. Recovery assets report approach readiness again. The call is measured and precise. They wait for authorization that now carries weight beyond the moment. Interrupt. Recovery approach window. Revalidated. Captain Carter provides no commentary. She confirms receipt and maintains posture. She understands that once the request exists on the record, delay without response becomes a decision. Authorization or denial must be owned. The environment remains hostile to mistakes. Wind shifts again. Dust lifts and settles. Visibility stays under 100 yards. The emergency strobe remains shielded. Loose straps stop flapping as gear gets secured. The cracked headset carries clean traffic now. Interrupt. Perimeter remains contained. Higher headquarters returns with guidance that acknowledges the request and authorizes continuation through a defined window. The language is formal and specific. Conditions, times, review points. It is not an endorsement. It is a documented decision. Interrupt. Continuation authorized with conditions. The immediate threat is contained for the moment, not eliminated, not defeated. Contained by geometry, posture, and time. Chem lights remain fixed. Sectors hold. Movement beyond the markers does not close. Recovery assets move. Rotor wash grows louder and then steadies as aircraft approach under control. Engines on the ground remain at idle. Fuel margins hold within the authorized window. Interrupt. Recovery assets inbound. Captain Carter logs the authorization and the conditions. She logs the time. She logs the names and positions associated with the decision. The notebook closes briefly and then opens again for the next entry. The record is continuous. Request logged. Decision pending. The accountability trigger is pulled without ceremony. Responsibility is explicit and traceable. The chain holds. The perimeter holds. The threat remains contained, and the record now owns what happens next. First light approaches without announcement. The wind eases and carries less grit. Visibility improves beyond 100 yards but remains limited enough to demand attention. Engines wind down to idle and stay there. Rotor wash fades. The perimeter quiets. Not because risk disappears, but because control returns. Recovery activity moves deliberately. Silhouettes cross the ground with purpose and spacing. Gear transitions from ready to secured. The environment shifts from pressure to process. Interrupt. Perimeter status steady. Captain Emily Carter, Air Force Security Forces, remains within the chain. She does not step outside authority to achieve the outcome. She aligns decisions with lawful orders and documented ground truth. The record shows who requests, who authorizes, and when responsibility transfers, no voices rise, no posture changes. The system works as designed when facts are allowed to stand. A closed notebook rests where it belongs. Entries complete and times intact. A watch face holds steady. Spent brass lies in the dirt as evidence of readiness, not spectacle. The aircraft site clears in sequence. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is hidden. Interrupt. Recovery phase proceeding as authorized. This is not about ignoring orders. It is about ensuring orders reflect reality on the ground. Duty includes accurate reporting when pressure pushes toward convenience. Control is lawful when it is documented. Accountability endures when the record is continuous. Accountability holds. Radios remain quiet except for confirmations. Engines settle into a lower register. Wind continues to ease. The perimeter transitions to normal security posture as recovery completes. The moment passes without celebration. Interrupt. Operation transitions to follow on review. The outcome is not defined by a single decision. It is defined by a process that protects people and preserves truth. Records outlast noise. Lawful control depends on them. Continuity depends on them. When facts are logged and responsibility is explicit, justice does not require drama. It requires discipline. The perimeter stabilizes, but the record stays open. Night lifts without ceremony. Equipment remains staged. Engines are quiet. Radios are held but not keyed. A watch face stops on the minute where the decision lands. Fuel time continues to bleed down even after the threat pauses. Captain Emily Carter, Air Force Security Forces, stands as the accountable officer on the ground. Higher headquarters issues lawful orders. Both paths sit within U.S. authority. Both carry cost that survives review. Option 1 is execution now. Collapse the perimeter immediately. Reduce exposure. Accept loss of recovery opportunity. And carry the risk that people or equipment remain exposed. The record closes fast. The review is shorter. Option 2 is documentation first. Log the risk. Request delay. Preserve the perimeter long enough to recover, and accept increased exposure under watch. The record grows heavier. The review lasts. Status update. Communications remain silent by discipline. Which choice holds? There is no third path. Choose execution now or choose documentation first. State your choice clearly in the comments and own the cost you accept. Dawn settles over an empty perimeter. Recovery vehicles roll out in sequence. Tires cutting clean tracks that lead away and do not return. Gear is stowed by checklist. Engines spool down and hold. Rotor noise fades until only wind remains. Visibility improves beyond 100 yards. Radios stay quiet because there is nothing left to clarify. Interrupt. Sight transitions to normal security posture. Captain Emily Carter, Air Force Security Forces, remains inside the chain. Actions stay on record. Responsibility is traceable from ground to headquarters without friction. The notebook is closed with entries complete. The watch face is steady. Fuel time is no longer critical. Interrupt, recovery, complete, and assets clear. This operation ends without ceremony because continuity matters more than noise. What happened is documented. What almost failed is visible. The process holds. Next mission queued. Like this video and subscribe to this channel. The next mission is already waiting, and the record will continue.